Hello, this is Coach Ulysses coming to you again to teach you the basics of chess. Today I'm going to be using my demonstration board and I'm going to be teaching you chess notations. And I'm going to teach you a little bit of in-game strategy, what's important in the in-game. And I'm going to go over castling with you. Okay, so let's begin. If you notice on my chessboard, you see letters and numbers. Letters and numbers on all sides. Okay? So in chess, every square has a name because you connect the file with the rank. What are files? I'll show you. Files in chess run vertical, up and down. So this is the A file. This is the B file. This is the C file. This is the D file. This is the E file, the F file, the G file, and the H file. Okay? And then where you see the numbers that run horizontal, that is called the ranks. That's rank 1. This entire rank here, that's rank 1. Where the pawns are, that's rank 2, rank 3, rank 4, rank 5, rank 6, rank 7, and rank 8. So therefore, when you match the files and the ranks, you know what the name of the square is. All right? So you would get a piece of paper, number it on the left-hand side of the paper. You can number it from 1 to 25. All right? And I'll show you what I'm talking about. 1 to 25, and then we're going to, on each line of that number, we're going to write our move, and then you're going to also write your opponent's move. All right? Okay. So, if I was to point to this square here, and you were to connect the rank and the file, what would you say? You probably would say that's A4, and you would be correct. That's the A4 square. If I pointed to this square, you would look at the file and the rank. Ah, that's the E file, and it's on the 4th rank. That's E4, right? And you would write that lowercase e4, echo 4, right? Okay. So let's name them. Let's name some of these squares. This pawn would be on the what square? A2 square. This pawn is on the B2 square. This pawn is on the C2 square. This pawn is on the D2 square. So on and so forth. Okay? All right. So now I'll show you how you would write it down. Okay? If we took this pawn here and we're starting a game, let's say we're recording our moves. We're starting a game, right? And we move this pawn here. Okay? That would be E4. That's plain and simple. So right at the top of your piece of paper where you numbered it from 1 to 25 or 30, on the left-hand side of that number, on the right-hand side of that number, you would write E4, right on that line, right where you wrote number 1, because you got to leave space You're going to move right across, and you're going to write your opponent's moves as well. Okay. So that's E4. If your opponent moved, what do you think that move is? Came from the E file, fifth rank, E5, right? All right. Now we're going to go a little further. How about if we started using pieces like knights, bishops, queens, rooks? Well, we have to specify that piece. So if I wanted to move my knight out, I have to say, let's say, let's say I move my knight out to 1, 2, over. What do you think that square would be? I moved it from G, right? But we're always going to move, we're always going to write down where we moved it to, not where it came from. Okay? So this would be knight F3. See that? Because the knight came to the F file and on the third rank. So that's knight F3. Now we know that we normally write down for knight, when we spell the word knight, we spell it with a K. But in chess, they use the letter N instead of K because they use the K for the king. Okay? So that won't mix you up and you won't get mixed up with that. Okay? Always use, when you're writing chess notations for the knight to signify, to identify the knight, write a capital N. All right? So that's knight F3. Knight F3. And you can make it the F a lowercase. Okay? So that's knight in F3. Okay? Let's say your opponent made a move. The opponent makes this move here. Okay? That's in C6 because the knight came to the C file and the sixth rank. So that's knight C6. So you write capital knight C6, capital N C6. That's all. Right? So let's say we want to take our bishop out. Right? So we say, okay, let's bring our bishop out. Right? We're going to put our bishop right there. What do you think that? What would we write for this move here? That's bishop B5 because the bishop went to the B file and stopped at rank 5. We would write that capital B, lowercase b, identifying the file, number 5. Capital B, lowercase b, 5. Bishop is on bishop B5. Okay? Let's say your opponent attacked our bishop. All right? And you moved, let's say, God forbid, you forgot that this bishop was being attacked. Okay? And you made a move like this. You moved your pawn instead of protecting that bishop. You moved your pawn to D3. All right? So that's what you would write down for the next move, right? Let's say your opponent says, oh, you forgot to move your bishop. I'm going to capture your bishop. This is how you write down a capture, okay? You would say A6, and for capture, we use the letter X. X. A6X, bishop B5. That's how you would write that down. The what move your opponent made. He took your bishop. So A6, letter X, bishop B5. Okay. Now, after you lost your bishop, it happens. You're going to be learning chess. It happens. Don't get frustrated because you lost the game. It's not the end of the world. Okay. You're learning. Let's say if you wanted to castle, you wanted to castle. Notice my king here. Bishop's out. Knight is in play, right? We have two empty spaces. That's the only way you can castle. It has to be the bishop has to be in play and the knight has to be in play. All right? Empty spaces. The king cannot have moved, and the rook could not have moved. Okay? And the way you write a castle down, and we know how to castle because we pick up your king first, and you go 1, 2, right? And then you bring your rook over. Castling is to protect your king. That's what castling is for. To get your king out of the center of the board where it could be viciously attacked. But get it in a corner. And you see that this little fortress is in now? That's castling. Even though you moved the king and the knight, the king and the rook, it's considered one move. All right, I'll show you again. Notice, you want to castle. You should castle early. You should castle within your first 6 moves, right? So you want to castle. You pick up your king first. That's the proper way to castle. Pick up your king first. All right? 1 moves over to the right. 1, 2. Only 2, right? Now the rook has to be moved to the other side of the king. And that's the way you castle on the king side of the board. Castling on the queen side of the board is a little different. Okay? And I'll show you. So the way you would write castling down on the king side of the board is 0 dash 0. Just that simple. And that signifies that you castled on the king side of the board. Everything to the left of the queen is the queen side of the board. Everything to the right of the king is the king side of the board. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's say our opponent moved his queen out, right? Moved it here, right? See that? So what do you think that would be wrote down as? Capital Q. The queen went to the F file and the 6th rank. So that's queen lowercase f6. Queen f6. That's what that's saying. Queen went to f6. Capital Q, lowercase f6, 6th rank. Okay. All right. So let's say we move this rook here to this square. We would write down rook, capital R, because rook is spelled with an R, rook E1. That's where the rook went. See that? Rook E1. Okay. Let's say our opponent made another move. I'm sure by now you know what that move is now. D6. That's the D6 move, right? Okay. You write down D6. So you're writing your move down and your opponent's move down right on the same line for move one. For move one would be your move and your opponent's move. Move two would be your second move and your opponent's second move. Move three would be your move and your opponent's move. Move for move three. Okay? So that's how it works. Right? Side by side, going right down the line from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth. Okay? All right. So you would write down that D6 move, right? Okay. So now let's say we wanted to move our knight out. This knight comes here. You probably already know now, right? That's knight C3. Okay. Let's say our opponent moves their bishop out. Where did the bishop go? The bishop went to the E file. What rank? 6. So you know there's going to be an E6 there, right? All you got to do is say bishop, capital B, E6. Okay. Now let's say I moved my bishop right here, right? Where did the bishop go? To the D file. So you write bishop, capital B, D2. Went to the second rank. All right. Now I'm going to show you how to castle on the queen side of the board. Now, when you castle on the queen side of the board, the additional piece that has to be in play is the queen. All right? Because if the queen was still here, you couldn't castle, right? So the queen is the additional piece when you castle on the queen side. That's why castling on the queen side is a little different from castling on the king side, because now you have 3 squares. When we castled over here, show you, when we castled over here, we just had to move 2 squares, right? King came here, 1, 2, and then the rook slide onto the other side, right? But now you have to move the queen out, bishop's in play, knight's in play. Rook hasn't moved yet, king hasn't moved, right? So the way we castle on the queen side is the king only moves 2 spaces, right? 1, 2. So the king would move, you pick up the king, 1, 2, right? King comes here, and now the rook has to move an extra piece and then goes right alongside of the king, right? So the rook now goes 1 and then slide right next to the king. And that's how you castle on the queen side of the board. Now you say, Coach Ulysses, how would I write that? You would write that as 0 dash 0 dash 0. Okay? Just that simple. Okay. All right. All righty. Okay. All right. So you got a basic idea of how to write your moves down. And now you could go to the library, or if you want to purchase a chess book, and if you have a chessboard that has the chess notations on them, great. If you don't, I know a friend of mine that used just a little piece of paper, and he taped the letters at the edge of the squares on his chessboard. So he went from A, on the bottom, he went from A to H, right? And then on the top of the chessboard where the squares are, he put A to H there, and then he put numbers on the sides from 1 to 8. And that's a real quick way of putting the chess notations on your chessboard. Okay? All right. All righty. So, what is important in the end game? What is important in the end game? Let me share with you what is important in the end game. In chess, you're going to have a lot of your pieces captured, right? A lot of your pieces will be off the board. Most of these pieces will probably be gone, right? And sometimes you can end up with positions like this, right? Something like this, right? Okay. Now, in game, let's say you're playing the white pieces. I know that the pieces are yellow, but I always refer to them as the white pieces because on most of the chessboards they have white pieces, black pieces. Okay, not colorblind, but I see it. Okay. Now, in the end game, what becomes increasingly important is pawns, because remember, pawns can become a queen if it gets promoted. It can become a rook. It can become a knight, or it can become a bishop. So you're trying to race your pawn to your opponent's opposite end, to your opponent's back row, so that your pawn can be promoted. So let's say it's white to move. Which one of these pawns do you think would be logical to move? Right? Well, I would have to say it would be logical to move this pawn because these pawns are further back from this rank. And you want to get a pawn across to this rank as soon as possible. So it's like almost like a pawn race now. You want to, because that's the way you could have power to checkmate this king. All right. So let's say you do this, right? Right. So your opponent sees that pawn advancing. Your opponent's going to want to try to stop that pawn. All right. So let's say he comes over, right? Right. Okay. He moves. He might come here. Right. Now, if you push that pawn here, your opponent can come over and stop you from becoming a king. I mean, excuse me, a queen. Because if you push here now your opponent can just take. See that? Okay. So it takes, in the end game, it takes a little strategy, okay? Let's say this king was over here. You're here, right? Who would have the advantage in this game? If you're playing the white pieces, you would have an advantage of the white of this game because this king cannot come over to stop this queen, this pawn from being promoted to a queen. So let's say white moves, right? Comes over. He's trying, right? Comes over. Look at this. Check. That's why pawns are so important in the end game because you can get another queen if you lost your queen. If you already have a queen on the board in the end game, that happens. If you already have a queen on the board in the end game, you can have two, you can have three, you can have four. No matter how many of these pawns that you can promote to your opponent's back rank, that's how many queens you can have. If you want that to be a knight, it could be a knight. If you want it to be a bishop, it could be a bishop. If you want it to be a rook, it can be a rook. But why not? Why not turn it into a queen and you have total power all over this entire board, right? So where the pawn promotes, that's where you would place, you would turn it into a queen. So this is how you do that. So where it promoted, On C8, you would replace this pawn with the queen. All right? And the way we would write that down is C8 equal sign queen. Check plus sign. Anytime you want to signify that you check up your opponent's king, it's always a plus sign. So this is queen C8 plus check. The king is now in check. Okay? So now when a king is in check, that means the king is in danger. It has to move out of danger. You cannot move any other piece unless you move your king out of danger. There's three ways of getting out of check. One, option one, can you capture the piece that's checking you? Do you have any piece that can come and check after that queen? No. Can you block the check with a piece? Let's say if you had this. Let's say if you had a bishop here. Now you just block the check. All right. So now you're no longer in check. All right. Or your last option is to just move your king. Move your king out of the line of check. Right? Because that queen has control of that whole entire eighth rank. Right? That's the option you would have to use there. So now, let's say you want to get another queen. You just race this pawn right up the board. See that? Usually at this point, your opponent would resign because there is no way your opponent is going to be able to fight a good fight against you when he or she has a queen and all you have left is a king and three pawns, especially not in this position. There's no way in the world, whoever's playing the white pieces, there's no way in the world they should lose this game. No way. Okay? So let's say the king wants to dance around a little bit, right? You go here. He's coming here, trying to pick off this pawn. You go in here, right? He comes here. You go here to a7. He takes. That would be king x g3 because he took the pawn that was on g3. So it's king. You write king x g3. King take g3. That's a pawn, right? Hey, here you go. You say, hey, I want another queen. Okay, no problem. No problem at all. See, now you got two queens. If I was playing the black pieces, I would say I resign. Take your king, lay it down on the board. That means that you resign. Your opponent wins the game. Okay, because there's no way in the world you're going to win this. Okay, all right. So let's checkmate that king. Let's checkmate that king. All right. So what we could do is, oh, king moves. Let's say the king moves here, right? We can go check. We're checking the king. What's the option does the king have? Not many. All right. Being attacked, got to move his king out of check. Let's say he moves here. Let's say he moves king to h2. He's got checkmate, one move. Now you have one move checkmate. Watch this. See this queen here? And this queen are working together. That's what's important in chess, getting your pieces to work together. This queen is going to wind up protecting this queen. Watch this. This queen comes down this long diagonal. Boom! Checkmate. And it's checkmate because the king cannot capture this queen because it is protected by the queen on G8. See that? I'll show you again. Comes right down that long diagonal and game over. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this lesson and I hope to see you real soon. Have a great day. Bye.